Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you guys so much for inviting me out and for the opportunity. So my journey really started exactly almost 10 years ago, almost a month apart. It was Halloween, my first year of college, and I had just almost drank myself to death. I woke up in a hospital bed not knowing where I was, and I had to recollect all the memories from the night before. And I'm sure you guys have had many nights like this before as well. But the not so funny part was, there was a good chance that I wouldn't have woken up that day. And after I learned that, I started to look at things quite differently. And there was after you try to kill yourself, they typically try to send you to therapy. And when I spoke to the therapist, we're sitting down and she asked me, "Hey Zion, do you still think about killing yourself?" And I remember telling her, this is my fourth almost near-death experience. I've been in 3 different car accidents, and here's number 4. And the fact that I'm still alive means that there's something more for me to find out from life, something more that I'm here for, and I want to find out what it is. And I'm lucky because almost 10 years later, exactly, I've had the great fortune of working with some of the biggest brands in the world. In my bio it said I got kicked out of business school at Rutgers. Eventually they actually hired me, where they were one of my clients, so that was a fun day for me. I've been able to support hundreds of entrepreneurs throughout the years, really grow their businesses from 6 to 7, 7 to multiple 7 figures, and I've had one of the greatest privilege serving entrepreneurs, and that's my absolute joy in life. So, where do we begin? Because of course I'm standing before you today after many, many years of eating shit. So this is me, August 2010. I just got hired for my first job. And these guys sold, I went to Rutgers University, so they sold Rutgers clothing and clothing for fraternities and sororities. I don't know if you guys have those here or not, but it's custom clothing, right? And the manager asked me if I can build a website for them where they can sell things online. So 10 years ago we didn't have Shopify. It wasn't that easy. This is a Magento site, and as you can see, there's still some dummy text on here. So I was just trying to figure out how to do it, right? Because she asked me if I could do it. I said yes. I had absolutely no idea how to put this website on when she asked me. So, but here's the thing. In life, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're the best or even if you're good enough. It's just whether or not you're going to answer the call as soon as the opportunity comes to you. And for me, it came in and I said yes, and I will figure it out afterwards. And I called in multiple favors from all my friends, all these different people. And eventually they got it done, which is great, and I got the credit for it, right? So, typical entrepreneur, I know. So, from that point, but how did I get this job? So, what you don't know about the story is I was actually selling a lot of weed in college, right? And and I actually sold some to the manager, and that's how I met her. And then while I was selling it to her, she's like, "Hey, what do you do?" They're like, "Well, I built websites in the past before," and that's when she offered me the job. So, here I am doing something that's not so great, but yet it kickstarted my entire journey. And the not so fun part of that is a couple of months later, I got arrested for it. And, and when you go through the entire process of getting arrested, when you get the mugshot, you have the orange jumpsuit on, and especially when you actually enter the cell, and that door closes behind you. I still remember to this day the feeling of my freedom being robbed from me, knowing that my decisions were no longer mine. And at the time I looked at my cellmate and I said, "How the fuck did we get here? This isn't it for us. This isn't what we were meant for. We're meant to change the world, not be in this cell." And that night, I wrote a letter to myself. And I told myself, this isn't it for me. And the moment that I get out of here, I'm going to start my business, because I really didn't have any other choice. I was in there with a cellmate. I asked him what he was in for. He's like, "Oh, I was smoking a joint." I was like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, now I can't find any work." And quickly, that's when it quickly hit me that that was my new reality, right? I'm unhireable now because I'm an entrepreneur, but I was unhireable then because of my criminal record. So, this is a lesson and a quote that really came to me at one of the best times in my life. And it's once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. So what this means for me is that when you decide on what it is that you want to do, you're cutting off a certain part of you that you're leaving behind, and you're bringing a new reality forward. And with every single step that you take, everything around you starts to support you in magical ways, in synchronicities and things that line up like you've never seen before. And I'm sure you guys have seen this before when you've made a commitment to something that you actually deeply care about. And then everything, all of a sudden, just starts to happen for you, right? So here we are, sketching all the potential logos, and the advice I give to entrepreneurs today is never start with a logo. It's the worst thing you could ever do. But that's not what was important here. What was important is that we started with a vision for what exactly it is that we wanted to build. And I was like, I really want this to be simple. I want this to be easy because the process has always been so difficult to get clothing, this type of custom clothing that we have in the States. And I wanted to make the process easy, but I wanted it to be fast. So the wings represent the messenger god of Hermes, and then of course the lightning bolt of Zeus, because we sold Greek clothing, and eventually it became Easy Greek. And this was my first business that really took off. And man, did it teach me a lot of lessons, and especially what operational scale was not. With all the success that we had with this business, the most important thing is where I started with it. And what I want to leave with you guys is, this is a picture with me here, where this is the first thing I ever sold. And as you notice, I'm in a parking lot. I had less than a couple $100s, but we created an amazing business model where people give us the money, then I take that money, then I order the things, then I eventually give those things to the other people, and then I make the money. So I didn't actually need a lot of money to get started. But for those of you, is there anyone in the room that's ever wanted to start their own business? Yes? How many of you have their own business today? Okay. So I'd ask yourself, for those of you that had your hands up that haven't gotten started, why? What is actually stopping you? Because the most challenging thing about starting a business is just getting out of your own way. And for me, my first customer, I still remember her, Tiffany. She was in the parking lot. She got this. She was super freaking happy. And it really made my day. And this business eventually took off to multiple states all around the country. We had a volleyball campaign, but it absolutely crushed me. And one day, I had a speaker come in. Later I found out he was the son of a billionaire, but he said, hey, in your entrepreneurial journey, don't focus on money. Focus on solving a problem for people, focus on helping people, focus on adding value to people, and the money will come. Now, if we look around the room, whether it's the speakers, the cameras, the laptops, the phones that we all have, every single one of these solves a meaningful problem in our world. And that's the amazing thing about entrepreneurship, is every single thing that we have around us was started with an idea, conceptualized by a person who eventually took some risk and said they were going to do it so they can make the world a better place. Now, of course, there's a lot of shit out there that I would argue whether it actually makes the world a better place or not, but that's for another day. So, the one thing that I really took away is if you want to make $1 million, get $1 million. Help solve a problem for 1 million people and get $1 from each one of them, and all of a sudden you have $1 million business. And that's an incredibly difficult way to build $1 million business, by the way, so I would not recommend it. So, what the biggest thing was from his talk was I realized that I didn't feel very fulfilled by that first business. I knew that I wanted more. I knew that I wanted more from my life. And I knew that if this business just disappeared off the face of the earth, the next day, who would really care? Egoic or not, right? Because hey, it was about me. I decided to look for something more, and eventually I channeled that into launching what you see here, which was eventually became New Jersey's largest co-working space. And much like this, we brought rooms of people together for tech and entrepreneurship, hearing stories of different entrepreneurs to inspire, but mostly because we just wanted entrepreneurs to know that they weren't alone. That there was multiple points of their journey that no matter how much pain and struggle that they're actually feeling,
They're not alone in that. And I wanted to bring people together so they actually felt it. And I imagine when you guys are here, you guys feel the same way. Because the most beautiful thing about community isn't that, community doesn't start just because you're sitting next to someone. It's when you actually start to interact, engage, go deeper, learn about each other, discover, why you're here, why you're here, what you're trying to get out of it. That's really when community starts to breed, and that's really an important lesson that I learned here. And, at one point, I was running this business, I was running my other business, I was going to school full-time, I was a president of my fraternity, and I was literally working 120 hours a week. And, sleeping every other day, and, eventually it just all came down on me, and I literally crashed and burned. But I didn't know it yet. So, one day, I was sitting at my computer, looking at, okay, what am I doing here? Because the fact of the matter is, we started this because we wanted to support mentorship in the state of New Jersey and the state of New York, but I found out that my mentors more or less took advantage of me. And that was a really hard pill to swallow. So every single day, I had to bring myself to work, and it was this roller coaster of, fuck, I hate everything I'm doing, to, okay, I'm going to motivate myself again. And that is the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship. But one day, I was sitting down, and I realized a month had passed by, because this was the conversation that I had in my head. And I had no idea what happened that entire month. And I looked up, and I laughed at myself. Because the fact of the matter is, there's the things in life that you can control, and the things that you cannot. The things that you can influence, and the things you absolutely cannot. Yet, I don't know about you guys, but none of us have this magic crystal ball where worrying about our future is going to change anything about the way that we're going to craft our path. And that's the most amazing thing about life, is that every single day, we get to enjoy being in the moment today, knowing that we get to change an hour from now, 10 hours from now, and tomorrow. But what I realized was, instead of me focusing on my purpose, I'm going to do two things, right? And before I go into that, there's 4 types of capital. A lot of you guys know that there's money, right? Very obvious one. But there's also audience, right? So building a following, people that really consume your work and really support you, right? Building relationships, like the one that I have with Joanna, who gives me amazing opportunities like this. And, of course, skills. Many of you guys are designers in the room, so to really master that craft so you can really show up in service to society. And then, of course, there's money. But I picked 2 of these to really focus on and really give myself, at that point I said, hey, I might not know what I want to do, but I'm going to build as many relationships with as many people as I can, and I'm going to build and work on my skills. In this case, it was marketing for me. Until one day, I know that the thing that I really want to do, the thing that I really want to put all my time and energy behind, I'm going to take it all the way, but I'll be ready. And I'll be ready for when that opportunity actually comes. So, couldn't have been a few months later, and I do believe that the universe gives us signs, and it gives us signals, and this is one that I wish I never received. One of my dear friends who really inspired me to be an entrepreneur, I remember he had this black notebook. He was only 2 years older than me at the time. I was 19. I would look through this notebook, and he had all these big ideas, and I just wanted to look inside. What are they? And one of them was a green taxi car company, right? Mind you, this was 10 years ago, so it was very novel then. And the other one, he wanted to build a bridge from one point of his home state of Maryland to another home state of Maryland. And he'd go around telling everyone, he's like, oh, look at Zion, he's 19, he's this 40-year-old person in a 19-year-old body, of course, none of which I was. And he almost believed in me blindly. But that did give me the push I needed to really step into entrepreneurship, because for me, I couldn't fathom how someone could possibly think that big. The fact that this guy actually went into the taxi commission and to try to get his project off the ground, what do you mean you walked into the taxi commission? What the hell did you even say? I couldn't even wrap my mind around what it is that he did, that he wanted to do to get started. But then I received the news that he actually passed away in a car accident, and he was 23. And that day, I was working, I was working long hours, and that day I could just not bring myself back to work. And I just sat there and I thought to myself, this must be a sign. Because of everything that he meant to me and everything that he did for me, and it reminded me just how short life is. It reminded me that every single day that we have, as long as we can take a breath, what does it mean that we can actually do with our lives? And I had to ask myself the question, that if I lived another day the way that I was, would I actually genuinely be happy with the direction that I'm taking things? And that answer was absolutely no. So what I do? I left everything behind. I left both businesses behind, and I just quit. And then I went on to my next thing, and I said, you know what? This is going to be it. This is going to be a thing that really helps change the world. And the problem with that was I didn't realize how burned out I was. I didn't realize how much I haven't taken care of myself, how much sleep I wasn't getting. And I fell into one of the worst depressions of my life, and I probably lost 1.5 years of my life after that. And I remember just laying in bed for hours. It'd be 1 o'clock, and I just couldn't get out. Because the scariest thing for me was just getting out of bed that day. And honestly, the thing that really separates people that get shit done and people that don't is really if you can get out of bed, and I couldn't. And it was very humbling for me because I built a 7-figure business and a 6-figure business as an undergrad, and this is still to this day the one business that's absolutely failed. Could not even make $10,000, right? And I lost all my confidence as an entrepreneur. And I essentially had to start over with what I thought was nothing. And then I had to remind myself, you know what? I just have to go back to what it is I want to focus on, because I got back to that story of this is about me, what am I here for, what's the purpose, me, I, and it just became a very selfish talk. And the problem with that is I was thinking inward and stuck in my head when I had to think outward of how can I impact and serve other people. And I reminded myself of the lesson that I learned 1 year ago, where I don't know what it is I want to do with my life, but I'm going to focus on my relationships, I'm going to focus on my skills, I'm going to figure out how to get out of this. And that's when I learned one of the most powerful lessons that's literally given to us by Sir Isaac Newton. I'm sure some of you guys know this as the second law of motion. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion unless acted on by an outside force. Now, we have this is one of the written rules of how our world works. But here's the thing. If you apply this to us, when we're at rest, we're the ones that keep ourselves where we are. And when we're in motion and we get the ball rolling and we get that momentum, the only outside force that can actually stop us is us. If you think about that for a moment, it just shows that, there's 7.7 billion people on the planet, and for whatever reason, today, in this moment, we got brought together. And it just shows the power of human beings and our ability to do whatever it is that we want to do with our own lives. And I just want to let you guys know, in case you need a reminder, that you are the person that can get any ball moving. So to essentially climb out of the hole that I put myself in, I decided I was just going to try everything. Because the biggest thing that I could do is if I didn't know what I liked doing, at least I can figure out what I don't want to do, what I don't enjoy doing. And the reason why I've started so many businesses is not because I want to brag about it, it's not because I want to because I deserve a medal for it, it's because I didn't know what I wanted. It's because every time I brought a business to a certain point, I realized, hey, this isn't for me. And that's okay too. Because I'm sure there's certain projects that you're working on, certain passions that you might be pursuing where you said, hey, you know what? This isn't for me, and that's also okay. Because there's a lot of shame and guilt around letting things go and leaving things behind. And for me, this became something really, really easy eventually. So, here's me in Turkey. I literally launched a Kickstarter campaign to sell Turkish towels from this village that didn't speak any English, right? Eventually, I started an agency of my own. We had 34 WordPress plugins, powering over well over 100,000 websites, hundreds of thousands of users. It was an agency, WordPress agency, development agency, and that really allowed me to work with all these amazing brands. And me as someone that got kicked out of business school, essentially having no real business experience, right, other than all my failed businesses, I got to see the inside of some pretty amazing companies, $20 million companies, $100 million companies, $1 billion companies. Except I got to sit in the seat as an advisor, where I'm telling them how to lead their digital strategy and how they can, essentially coordinate all their online efforts. And I got to look under the veil and just see, and this is really where I got to learn so many lessons. But with every single step that I took, it just helped me regain my confidence as an entrepreneur. And that's really the only reason why I can stand in front of you today. And eventually I actually work with on a startup with Richard Branson, where we try to serve the oceans. And I literally went to the UN, met the president of Costa Rica, the prime minister of BVI, and at one point I was just like, you guys have been talking about the same shit for years and still haven't made a dent on it. And I realized, as attractive as this opportunity was, I also had to leave it behind. And that was really tough. So the biggest lessons of what it takes to actually get to your first 6 figures as a new business owner is sales, marketing, and hustle. But I don't mean hustle to the point where you're grinding. And by grinding, I mean forsaking yourself and not taking care of yourself to the point that you actually burn out. It's taking care of yourself, but building the right skills that you need to bring the revenue through the door, and that's really all it takes to get to 6 figures, and just try everything until you figure out what it is that you don't want to do. And, and that's the, and which is a very different path to when you start getting to 7 figures. And when you want to start building $1 million company, life looks very different, right? And building $1 million company really is not for everyone. It's a very, very painful path. Once you get to $1 million, you think you have a lot of money, but you really don't. Goes to everyone else. I see Marco nodding. He definitely agrees. So here's the thing. I found that the most important thing when you're actually building a business is to focus on 3 areas. Now, the first one is to focus on yourself. And again, I just said this, right? Taking care of yourself. Making sure that you build and invest in a team and to really build them up, make sure they know how important they are to the business, and to actually know where the organization is going so that there's a vision and mission for where everyone is headed. Now, all 3 of these need to operate together. Otherwise, when you serve yourself and you serve the team, but you don't necessarily know what the organization stands for, then everyone in the organization has a sense of purpose. They're purposeless. They have no idea where they're going. And you definitely don't want to be on a team like that. When you don't focus on yourself and you focus on your team and your organization, then you essentially lead to burnout. And as an entrepreneur, that's one of the most irresponsible places that you can put yourself, especially if you have a team. Because the moment that you don't take care of yourself, the moment you're giving from what you don't have, if something happens to you, what happens to all the livelihood of the employees you have, the team that you have, and all the people that you serve? They all go out the door. And that's why I say it's one of the most irresponsible, out of integrity things that you can do. And finally, if you focus on yourself and you focus on everything that your business really stands for, but you neglect your team, then you're going to have a lot of people leaving you, right? Abandonment. But it's when you have the intersection of all these 3, of taking care of yourself, taking care of your team, and knowing exactly where the organization is going, that's when you can really do something meaningful and really leave a big impact in the world. So when we kick off this journey, I always tell people, you need to start with vision. But what does that mean? And I don't mean like the vision statements and mission statements in the lobbies of corporate places that you ask an employee and they have no idea what it actually stands for. I mean the fact that the vision is the change that you want to see in the world, simply put. And when I ask people what their vision is, I ask them one question to really extract this out of them. And the question is, what do you want to be absurd in 10 years. So what does this mean? So imagine you're, so I used to live in California, right? So imagine you're driving down California and you see this McDonald's bag get hurled out the window, right? And you're just like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. It's absurd that the fact that someone's littering on this amazing, majestic road and essentially polluting our environment, right? But at one point, this was normal. And it's also absurd that there's a time that people actually thought McDonald's was real food. So that's what I mean by, it's absolutely absurd. So think about that question for yourself. If you can't answer that question, just think about the thing that absolutely infuriates you, the thing that makes you so angry that you can't possibly understand why this still exists in the world. And the beautiful thing about anger is channeled correctly, it's the same energy as passion. So for me, the answer is, I think it's absurd that entrepreneurs that want to change the world have to beg for money, figure out everything on their own, and often have to sacrifice themselves just to birth their vision to the world. That's crazy. You have people that want to make a meaningful difference in the world, yet they have to give everything up just so that they can actually show up and serve others. That's crazy. You know what's also crazy is that there's people that want to just live a better life and contribute to society, yet the most accepted way, even today, is to still get a job by going to college. Now, there's nothing wrong with a job, but the fact that you're in insane debt by the time that you leave, I think that's crazy. And I set out to say, hey, you know what? These are problems that I wanted to solve. The biggest thing when you're starting to go down the path of building and scaling a seven-figure business is it's focus, right? And when we think about growing a business, we think about doing more and doing a lot and going through all these different projects and just trying to take on as much as we can because it just kind of makes sense, right? The more I do, the more money I make. But when you're building a scalable, sustainable business, you actually have to cut off as much as you can and focus. Figure out who you want to serve, why you want to serve them, and really ask yourself, is this the person or the people that you really care to make a difference in their lives? And then just build the business around them. Because once you focus your energy, it affects your sales, operations, how you talk to your customers, affects everything. And more importantly, that's what actually gives you leverage. Now, what's leverage? So leverage, for me, is people and process. So the right people on the team with the right things that they actually know how to do with the right systems really frees you up so that you can make a bigger impact and do more with the business that you have in the world. Now, in the last year, with this mission under our banner, we grew our team to 45 people completely online, completely virtual culture. Now, at the beginning of the year, I had to let go of probably just over 25 people off this team. And the reason why I share this story with you is because my journey is still continuing. It has definitely not ended. And fact of the matter is, we had to make a shift, and no matter how hard it is, you still have to follow your path. And that's what we did. And today, I'm proud to say that since the changes happened, after many, many, many sleepless nights, I'm now an investor in a couple companies. I'm actually overseeing, like 8 multi-million-dollar companies at the moment, and with a much, much smaller team, so we know that we're headed in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, we just have to make sure that we're really clear of our guideposts. And that's the amazing thing about our journey and everything that I shared with you, is there's so many moments where I thought that I hit rock bottom. So many moments where I thought when I got arrested, when I got kicked out of school, when I got, when my businesses failed, when I entered depression, nothing happens to you. Everything happens for you. And if we could really ingrain that in our reality and start to look backwards and start to see, well, how did these things really make up who we are today? Then you start to live a life with no regrets, and you start to realize that every single hardship that you went through was because it gave you the opportunity to develop empathy and compassion for your fellow man, for your fellow person, so that eventually, if you see them going through that same pain and struggle, you can spot it and lift them up and walk alongside them. And this is one of my favorite quotes. I'm sure you guys have heard this by Steve Jobs, is you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And I would really invite all of you, as the people that you are today, to go back to all those moments where you were hard on yourself, the moments where you think you hit rock bottom, the moments where you felt guilt, the moment where you felt shame, the moments that you were beating yourself up because of the stupid decision that you made that got yourself in whatever position it is, and just be with yourself in each of those moments, because that person, the past parts of you, deserve kindness and compassion and forgiveness, because that person is going to be with you the rest of your life, and it's up to you how much you want to continue to carry. And it will be one of the most amazing exercises if you can just accept that the fact of the matter is nothing has happened to you, everything has happened for you. And if we're able to become the person that we're always meant to be, become happy with who we are now, happy with the direction that we're going, and we can align ourselves to a bigger mission and vision for the change that we want to see in the world, there's 300 people here. Imagine if every single one of us activated and aligned with something that we deeply cared about, and we all started to take actions and steps towards the direction that we actually wanted to contribute our energy to and really make a difference. If every single person, 7.7 billion people, start to think this way on our planet, what would our world look like today? And the fact of the matter is, it starts with you. It's your journey. Own it. And there's so many beautiful, beautiful things to come. So thank you.